Him, Chris, that he brings to the table, he is a kick blocker, so he can help you on kicking special teams.
Dwayne Clemens, the regular line, supposed to be the most valuable position in college football. How come you never saw Cal in a bowl game in recent years, and you never saw Cal's defense in the top 50?
Well, the problem is, and you got them both on the outside and both ends, you can't run outside, but obviously they ran inside and threw the ball against them, so you hope the other 9 guys are coming back.
Doesn't say a lot for the other 9 guys. All right. On the clock is Seattle, the number 17 pick, the pick that's been traded around a lot. There's Command Central here in Connecticut. Will return to the NFL draft from New York, Connecticut, at all points after this.
Seniors held off the junior eligibles until the second 5, but then Phillips, Glenn, Bayaka, Batuka went 6, 7, 8. Anderson, Upshaw, Clemens now make it 6 juniors of the 16 picks thus far in the first round. So we now have the Seattle Seahawks on the clock. And again, all 3 players that they were thinking about at 14 before they traded down to this spot for Houston are still there. Pete Kendall, the tackle/guard from Boston College, and Harrison, the wide receiver from Syracuse, Kennison, the wide receiver from LSU. They could double down again if they want, if they don't go too far, and they might just do that. Where are we going here? Let's go to Chris Myers in Dallas and see what Big D is thinking. Chris?
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on the Dallas Cowboys. They're still thinking about defense. We'll get to them. Speaking of defense, one of the Viking coaches told me they were ecstatic about Dwayne Clemens, the selection, which has been detailed. They're going to start out using him as a linebacker like they did with Broderick Thomas, and they think with the development in their scheme that he can become a Chris Dolman kind of player and add some of the pass rush and improve some of the defense that has been ravaged in the front 7 there over the recent years in Minnesota. Now let's go to Sal Palantonio at Ravens headquarters. Sal?
Thanks a lot, Chris. I talked to a number of NFL executives, and they say that Seattle is looking at Pete Kendall very closely. That's the guy that they wanted all along in the first round. If they can get him, he's there. So they might take him with this pick. Also, St. Louis is shopping Troy Drayton, the tight end out of Notre Dame, very heavily to a number of teams. The Ravens here in Baltimore, as well as the Philadelphia Eagles. So far, the asking price is too high. Now let's go to Chris Berman in New York.
All right, Sal, thank you. So to get everybody set, the next few picks here, Seattle at 17, because it's been a change-up. You have your score sheet at home. Seattle at 17, St. Louis at 18, and then we get back on chart with Indianapolis at number 19 and Miami with Jimmy Johnson at number 20. All right, Mel, now where are we looking? Seattle has Cortez Kennedy, a defensive tackle, and they got Sam Adams, who hasn't produced yet, but this is his year to produce. They could go defensive end, but with the brackets. But this, I've outlined where I think they're going to go. But the next few picks, what type of players are we seeing up there?
I think when you look at Seattle, we talked about Pete Kendall, and you mentioned him, Chris. I mean, he can play guard or tackle. I said in my report I thought it'd be a safe pick in the mid to late first round. I think with Dennis Erickson felt like maybe where they were selecting was a little too early. They picked up Glenn Montgomery, a defensive tackle, who Houston was going to let go anyway and wanted to move on. So at least they didn't lose the player they wanted. Marvin Harrison, I think, is the best player on the board. When you look at the offensive line, though, of Seattle, you see James Atkins, who they really like at left tackle, a former defensive lineman at Southwest Louisiana, but they want to move Kevin Mawai to center, and that's where Pete Kendall will come in. Plus, he has the versatility to also play tackle. So that's why Pete Kendall, Dennis Erickson feels will be a valuable asset right away as a rookie.
You know, everybody talked about Pete Kendall. He's got the short arms. I don't think it matters, particularly at the guard position. He can get on people, get in a hurry. I don't think his short arms mean anything. He's got a 19-inch neck, 31-inch arms. So what? If he gets you, you're not going anywhere. And I love the fire plug guys in the middle. Being a shorter quarterback like Rick Meyer is, it's good to have smaller guys. If you've got a Jonathan Ogden, for example, at guard at 6'8" and 318 pounds, and you're a 6'2" quarterback, you got problems if somebody stands up
in the back of the helmet.
Or in the back of the head. Right. Or back of the shoulders, really.
My goodness, you mean we're talking about a lineman that's not 300 pounds in this draft than Kendall?
But
you know
a heck
what
of a
else short arms
player.
is good? You don't have to pick up a lot of checks at dinner. And you know, when he played for Dan, you know what you're getting with a Boston College lineman. And that's it. Or the home run hitter Harrison, the wide receiver, unless they double down again. NFL draft here in New York, and it's pick number 17 with the Seahawks with less than 4 minutes to go on the pick. They arrived here. This is an Alaska Airlines special, this pick. It began with Oakland, and they made a trade with Houston to get up into the number 9 spot to pick Ricky Dudley. And as a result, the Oilers got this pick in addition to a second and a fourth. Then the Seahawks went down to this pick 17, allowing Houston to go up to 14 to pick Eddie George. So the Seahawks, for allowing Houston to move up, pick up defensive tackle Glenn Montgomery. So now the question is, could the Seahawks double down again? If the three names I have are correct, they could go a couple more spots down, or they could just get the pick and get it over with. Let's go up to our Bristol headquarters with Chris Fowler and Mike Lombardi. Guys?
Yeah, it's the pick from the team that used to be in L.A., went to Oakland, traded to Houston, to Seattle, which may be going back to L.A., the guy that used to be in Cleveland's war room. What's going on right now? Pick number 17, the middle of the first round. What are you thinking? If you're not in the first round, you try to trade up, or what if you have one of these picks?
Well, I think the two teams that don't have first-round picks are looking now that they potentially can get into the first round, San Diego and San Francisco, as we start to get in the bottom half of the first. Defensive linemen are obviously a premium, so they're going to go right now. Tony Brackens may be the only one with great pass-rushing skills that you could potentially get at this slot.
Well, watching Tony Brackens play in college at Texas, he was truly one of the difference makers among the defensive players in college football. Texas' defense without Tony Brackens in there was completely different. The stats were night and day when Brackens came back from his injuries and was able to play.
I think Tony's a fine player, and I think in terms of draft management, you've got to try to find yourself a defensive lineman.
Bucks have done. Got to be a trade card when it takes longer. You see, well, let's see, that's, what is that, a second and a fourth, and how do you pronounce that?
He's
name?
trying to figure out who's going where.
Let's see, we got Val in the picture there. I can't see. Is that Val Pinchback? Well, this could be a confusing trade. We got three, Reggie Roberts, Jim Stegall. We got them all involved now.
The Seattle Seahawks, which have been on the board with the 17th pick, have concluded a trade with the Detroit Lions. Detroit moves into the 17th choice in the first round. With that pick, Detroit is selecting Reggie Brown, linebacker, Texas A&M. And Seattle obtains Detroit's picks, first one in the first round, 21st position, third round, the 91st position in this draft.
The Seattle Seahawks have done some good poker playing. If Montgomery can help them at all at defensive tackle, and I'll tell you you saw that look on Jimmy Johnson's face when Mobley went to Denver.
Yeah, well, it just got sadder.
Yeah, this is the other real speed linebacker that would fit, I think, that Jimmy had his eye on. And so now Detroit gets some speed at the linebacker position.
When you look at Reggie Brown, what he did early in his career wasn't that much, wasn't very impressive. But when he came on as a junior, he started to get a lot of attention. And this past year, he really made his presence felt. Then he had his workout, which was incredible. Ran tremendous 40 times in the 4.48 range, showed great quickness and good strength. And I think when you looked at the computer numbers of Reggie Brown, then you threw in the productivity from this year. Until this season, like I said, he was basically a workout warrior, an underachiever. People questioned his instincts. But this year, they freed him up to get after the quarterback more, play in coverage, become almost like a Kevin Hardy without those great instincts. And that's what has allowed Reggie Brown, in a very, very poor linebacking crop, to force Detroit, after Mobley had been taken, to move up to Reggie Brown.
Well, I think you also have to take into consideration they lost Chris Spielman. I mean, you lose Chris Spielman, you lose somebody. There's no doubt that they had to improve speed in that area. Again, you're talking about a division that puts the ball in the air, and you need people back in secondary coverage underneath with linebackers. I think it's another good choice and a good trade for both teams.
Well, let's get the opinion of Gary Danielson, Joe. He's out at Arizona, but Detroit making a move, and they have 2 first-round picks, so they could play a little bit, and that's what they did.
Yeah, Chris, that's exactly what they did. I heard Joe speculating they signed Michael Brooks to replace Chris Spielman. I think the pick of Reggie Brown, a lot of really wheeling and dealing by the Lions here. They fear Jimmy Johnson picking right in front of them might take Brown, who they tagged as the speed linebacker they needed. And with the money they can sign with Brown, Mike Johnson might be in a little bit of trouble, a high-paid outside linebacker. They can sign Brown, take a little money away from Mike Johnson, and use it to pay Kevin Glover, who was their franchise player. They retracted that franchise designation. They can save some money, so the Lions feel like they can get 2 players with this pick, an outside linebacker and Reggie Brown, and can sign their center, Glover, which they desperately need. They lost 4 offensive linemen.
The 18th choice in the first round, the St. Louis Rams select Eddie Kennison, wide receiver from Louisiana State University.
Certainly has some speed.
Are now on the clock with a pick obtained earlier from Atlanta.
Certainly has some speed
and really
can return. That's a big plus for Kennison.
Yeah, and he really came out of school a little bit early, only because I don't think Jerry DiNardo was going to allow him to go on and participate in track during the spring. I think there was a little philosophical difference between the head coach and him, so he said, fine, if I can't do the things I did, then I'm going to come out of school. I think I can be a first-round pick. He can. And you brought it up, Chris. This kid is a heck of a